Welcome everyone to the Week 9 presentation for ME105 Medical Terminology. We are nearing the very end of our course, which is very exciting, so please make sure you watch for upcoming due dates, especially in weeks 9 and 10. The weeks tend to overlap, and the due date for week 10 is different than your normal due date, so watch for those messages to come in the classroom announcements, as well as it will be emailed to you through the campus portal as well. Our mission for this week is quite simply to get you prepared for that final exam. So you're really going to focus in on starting to study for that. And that's something you guys need to take some self-direction for and really set up a plan of attack. I will give you some helpful hints, but unfortunately I can't do the studying for you. You will also have a weekly discussion as well as a course project assignment. That assignment's a little bit larger than your normal weekly assignment, so we'll talk through that here in the next couple of slides. All right, in terms of your course project, it is a research project and it's just a great way to exhibit all the knowledge that you've gained over the last few weeks of our course. So it is a final paper. You will be writing it in paper format. It should be 2 to 4 pages in length. It should also contain a title page as well as a reference page. And again, your references should be in APA format. What to include. So the body of your paper, this is what we need to see. I always tell people if you spend a paragraph on each of these, you'll have no problem coming up with that 2 to 4 pages in length. And again, we're typing it. This isn't handwritten. Once you dedicate time to it, should go rather smoothly. So you're going to choose one organ within the body to research, and then you're going to discuss the following things about that organ. So first of all, choose the organ. Choose something you're interested in, not something that's of no interest to you. That'll make the project a little more bearable and something you can connect with. So you're going to discuss in the first paragraph what the organ's responsible for. Go into some good detail. The next paragraph, focus in on what endocrine gland is linked to that organ. Again, your textbook has a whole chapter on endocrine. Out of the 13 glands, every organ is linked to some endocrine gland. Talk about, what it's linked to, what hormones affect it, all of that fun stuff. The next two, the endocrine gland that's linked to and the hormones associated with that, I could see bunching that into one solid paragraph. Again, for a paragraph, we're looking for 6 to 8 sentences. And with that content, you shouldn't have a problem. Another paragraph would be what the function of each of those hormones that you listed is and any pathologic conditions associated with it. You can also go into pathologic conditions of the organ in general outside of the hormones, and that could be a whole separate paragraph. The last thing we want to see in your paper is a chart. And within that chart, list at least 3 medical words that you've used in your paper. Break them into their word parts, and then give the definition of each word part. A lot of times students will look at that and go, I have no idea what that means, or they'll make it more complex than it has to be. So I have an example, I believe, on one of the upcoming slides. So first let's talk about the grading of it, and then I'll show you that example of that table. And again, the table should just be in the same document with your paper, probably at the end of your paper before you get to your reference page, just insert that table. So your project, and the reason why we're talking about it today in the session, is because it's worth a lot of points. It's worth 100 points. So that's going to make a big impact on your final grade. This is not an assignment you want to skip. This is not one you want to try to turn in late. This is one that you want to be prepared for. You're focusing in on, you're really doing some good quality work. Here's how I'm going to break down your points. This grading rubric can also be found in the From the Instructor document, found in week 9 as well. So 80 points. So the whole meat and potatoes is from you choosing that one organ and then discussing it in the following fashion. And again, it's all those things we just talked about on the previous slide. What the organ's responsible for, what endocrine gland it's linked to, what hormones are associated with it, the function of those hormones, and related pathologies to that organ. 12 points are going to come from that table, so you do not want to skip out on that table. The table, I'll show you an example here in a second. It doesn't have to be hard and complex. It's quite easy. Display 3 medical words you used in your paper. break them into their word parts, and then define each of those word parts. The remaining 8 points of that 100 points that are possible is going to be spelling, grammar, referencing, and the length requirement. Don't forget to list your references. That alone will cost you a lot of that 8 points. Don't forget to use your spell check and proofread it, and then make sure that you have the 2 to 4 pages in length. Include a title page and a reference page. Again, 100 points, that's a big impact, so make it a good impact on your grade. Here's a sample table. It doesn't have to be complicated. List the medical term, and I've listed some here for you. List the word parts. Make sure you define the word parts. If you don't have the whole definition at the end, but you have the word parts and the definition of each word part, that's fine. Just don't break it down and don't give me a definition. That's what we're trying to avoid. We want to make sure that you know how to synthesize the knowledge of breaking a word apart, defining its parts, and then coming up with the definition. A couple of hints on your final review when you're starting to prepare for that. And the good news is, and we'll get to this slide in a second, but your quiz this week is like a final exam practice. It's not optional whether you take it, but it kind of gives you a preview of some of the questions that could appear on your final exam, which is kind of a bonus. So definitely make sure you prepare and are ready. And it's nice that we don't have new content to focus on this week. You can really hone in on that studying. So the first thing I always tell students is analyze your strengths and weaknesses in terms of the content. Is there a certain chapter that you struggled with more than others? Is there a certain body system that you truly don't even remember that you need to make sure you brush up on? A lot of times students will focus on what they already know, which is great, but then they don't hone in on the stuff that might have slipped out of their brain. So focus in on first on the stuff that are your weaknesses in terms of, oh man, this body system was really confusing. I've got to get that in my brain first and foremost. Start with that stuff. Re-listen to the presentations. The best part of online, I record the presentations. They don't disappear. They're always there for you to listen to at your discretion. So re-listen to the ones especially that may have been more confusing for you. Review the readings from the chapters. Look up what the recommended reading was for that week, and then read through those chapters again. Reintroduce it into your brain. That repetition of doing all of these things is going to help it stick even better. Use your previous assignments. You do hard work on those assignments, use those as study aids. That's always a great thing for you to have on hand as well. Again, we talked about this briefly, but your quiz this week is a final exam practice. It does count. So it's not like it's optional whether you take it or if it counts towards your final grade. It does. It's 20 points just like a regular weekly quiz. It is something you want to prepare for. So if you're starting to study for that final exam, that's going to help you prepare for the week 9 quiz as well. It's a random sampling. It's just 10 questions. It comes from the previous material from what we've already covered in the class. Again, questions that you might see on your final exam, so it's always good to have those in your brain. It is, again, I can't stress this enough, the week 9 quiz is mandatory, just like all the quizzes are. So just because it's a final exam practice doesn't mean it's optional. You still have to take it. We'll talk about the final exam more detail in week 10, but do remember your final exam that's upcoming in week 10. It's comprehensive. All the course content is fair game. The final exam is a heavier point total and more questions, similar to your midterm exam. So for your final exam, expect 50 questions and 150 points possible. It will make a huge impact on your grade. That's why it's nice to have week 9 to go ahead and start preparing for it as well. As always, if you have questions or concerns, reach out to me. I'm always here to help you. And your main reference that you can use to help you get prepared is, of course, your textbook. That should be your main guide, should be something you want to hold on to. Medical terminology is one of those books that it's nice to keep even after you've completed the class. It's a great reference source to just put next to anything that you may keep throughout your college profession in preparation for your final profession. Thank you so much for your time this week. Look for upcoming reminders on the due dates of when things are due, because again, week 9 and 10, it's extremely important that you know and understand what the due date is, because it could be a little bit different than our regular weeks, and that you know and understand that late work is usually not accepted in those weeks, so you have to make sure you turn it in on time. Other than that, have a great week. Thank you for your time.